as long as you're doing what needs to be done and I'm doing what needs to be done, it's a good relationship. And 999 times out of 1,000, that's how it goes. You have some people that try to break the rules. I'm not in that camp. I don't do gray. I'm a bright line, black and white type of guy.
What's up, Sarasota? It's Felipe Colon,
Trey Martel,
Carolyn Carino,
and we're here with our special guest today, Maury Azerad of Properties Title Management.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Thanks for being here, Maury.
Yeah.
We're going to get right into it, as we always like to do. Tell us about who you are, what Properties Title Management is, and what separates you from everyone else here in town.
Great, yeah. So I'm a real estate attorney. I am an owner of Properties Title. We're a full-service, attorney-based title company, closing, escrow, the whole nine, kind of like the one-stop shop. What separates us? I mean, it's all about customer service these days. The customer's king or queen, and we just go above and beyond for them in whatever way we can. Try to never say no. As long as it's legal and ethical, we'll do it. And we just get the deal done. We get it done on time. Give everybody peace of mind on some of the biggest transactions that they do in their lives. So
that's awesome, Maury. Thanks for being here again. And, one of the reasons we wanted to have Maury on is we often talk about, Sarasota doesn't have a lot of larger industries, but we have a lot of kind of smaller ones. And one of the most important industries in Sarasota is everything having to do with real estate, real estate development, and all the ancillary fields. So that's one reason, there's a method to our madness. That's why we have our special guest host, Carolyn Carino here.
Yes, hi. Thanks for having me.
Great.
Thanks for having me, Brad. I'm taking your spot, so.
Well, you're taking my spot technically.
I'm taking your spot technically, yeah, I guess you're right.
I'm in Brad's spot because he is on a wonderful family vacation on the other coast this week. We hope he and family enjoy that.
Yes, thanks for having me.
And that's why we're here.
Yeah, and I unfortunately have not had the pleasure to work with you yet.
Well, hopefully that'll change.
That
in the
will
future.
change.
I'd
I think
love
that
to
will change.
Have the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so one of the things, from my point of view in real estate, there's so many things that happen within a transaction. So tell us a little bit about how you start to finish. Who is working on your team?
Certainly. I've got 4 full-time closers, an office manager, and then I have my one of my partners who works with me in the company. And so we're, fully staffed, if not overstaffed, for what we do, which I think is very important in this business to really have somebody, no matter what's going on, somebody that can kind of pick up and take care of whatever needs to be done. As you know, real estate comes alive on the weekends, after hours. I have my cell phone on my business card. A lot of realtors call me. A lot of realtors text me questions. Hey, I need this addendum written up. It's Sunday night and we got to get this offer in. So even before the contract is signed, a lot of times I will have some participation in that process. And then we open things up. As soon as we get the contract, we open up immediately. We coordinate escrow. Some title companies are like, that's the realtor's job. We like to just go above and beyond for our realtors.
You're holding
We hold escrow. Okay. We follow up on escrow if we haven't received it. Or earnest money deposits we're talking about. And
no contracts classes today.
Yeah, I was about to say.
We're not going into contracts.
This might sound a little inside baseball for some guests, but I like to be cynical on the show. I joke about everybody in Sarasota is a real estate expert, but to be fair, we do have quite a few astute real estate investors in town who I'm sure are some of both of your clients.
Probably.
And Trey is a budding real estate investor himself, or at least styles himself as one, right?
I got a few properties, yeah.
So, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of the broader real estate community around here, how you work together, how sometimes you don't work well together. I mean, any anecdotes? That's the kind of stuff we like to talk about. I can work
with anybody. As long as you're doing what needs to be done and I'm doing what needs to be done, it's a good relationship. And 999 times out of 1,000, that's how it goes. You have some people that try to break the rules. I'm not in that camp. I don't do gray. I'm a bright line, black and white type of guy. And when it comes to my business, nothing is worth losing my business, losing my law license.
Yeah, of course.
So I just keep everything above the board. But the important thing is I set that expectation ahead of time. So people know where I stand. If they don't want to work with me, they can find somebody else that they may want to work with. But that is, ethics are paramount to me in this and how I run things.
That's awesome.
Speaking of people that want to work with you, what are some of your strategies for customer acquisition?
Yeah, I'm big on education. I do a lot of seminars for realtors, just whether it be contracts, the dry stuff, or whether it be what's going on in the industry right now. There were big changes in the condo laws, or big changes when it comes to prohibiting foreign entities from acquiring real estate. When the law changes, the realtors need to know so they can adjust their business. And so I give them the education. Making myself available to them goes a long way. I mean, the minute you solve a big problem for a realtor that is a matter of whether it's going to close or not, and then you close on time, I think at that point you've demonstrated your value. So
Superhero powers sometimes.
Yeah,
Really?
not all the time. Sometimes it's a simple fix. Sometimes it needs some heavy lifting.
Yeah.
And so, but if we can get it done, I think that's more retention. But acquisition, it's just face-to-face, one-on-one relationships with the people that refer me business, which are my agents. So,
I think we can all agree that real estate's changed a lot just in the last 3 years, 4 years. Well, we'll
And
start
continuing to
pre-COVID,
change
right?
even more.
So
Yeah.
what have you seen in that realm of real estate in those changes? Anything big stick out?
Right, because you have the window into the transaction
Right.
volume, right? I mean, Carolyn's only dealing with her transactions. You're dealing with everybody's transactions in theory. So you have a better eye for the trends, I would think, than most realtors who say they do.
I've been doing this for about a dozen years. This is kind of all I've ever done in my career. And I mean, one of the biggest changes I would say is back when I used to first do this, we would sit at a closing table and the buyers would be there and the sellers would be there and the realtor would be there and the lender would be there. And they would exchange keys and talk about how the, backyard gate sticks and how you have to turn the knob just so. And it was all kind of just a all together kind of experience. Now everything's remote. Everyone's out of town. More and more we're moving towards electronic signing of documents, electronic notarization, remote notarization for people that are, not present or can't get to a notary, that type of thing. So it's just like everything else, increasingly becoming more online, increasingly becoming less personal. And I mean, I think a lot of industries are going that way.
It is. Well, it's good to hear that
and
you are
there's a big
doing
demand
that.
for it because it's
exactly.
convenient for people.
We often like to play devil's advocate. Are there any downsides to that? I mean, what are just for me, I don't like doing paperwork
absolutely.
the old-fashioned way. I like the electronic.
Yeah,
obviously,
sure.
And I do a lot of business by phone. So what's the downside to not being at the closing table?
I mean, there are trade-offs in every new technology that's adopted. I think you lose that personal touch. You lose the ability to make that personal relationship, which keeps people coming back, just from an entrepreneurial standpoint and from the realtor standpoint too, I think. The buyer doesn't get to hear about the door that sticks and how to open it, right? They just, they get the key either from the agent or in the mail, and maybe they never even meet who's selling them the house.
It's true. I can't tell you how many times that's happened, actually. And it's, having that ability to do it is great. And also, you do lose that a little bit, so you have to come up with it in different ways, right?
That's right. We have to try to innovate other ways. There's a new closing company in town that will bring a branded charcuterie board and champagne to do the closing, as opposed to just a plain old mobile notary that'll just sit there
I wouldn't like
go
that.
through the motions.
You know why I wouldn't like that?
No.
Because I feel like I was paying for that.
I was going to say, it's a little more expensive.
Don't make it too nice, because then I'm going to be skeptical.
You don't want to think that's built into
How much
the
my
fee.
charcuterie board cost me?
Right. No,
Right.
that
Is
wasn't
that on the closing statement?
That's a good point. Yeah, but I mean, certainly it's not for every transaction, but maybe some of the more high dollar.
I'm sure
stuff,
someone likes that.
There's an audience for all of it.
So you touched on a little bit the changing laws with the condo associations. This is something that really piques my interest. Can you dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a catastrophic collapse of the Surfside condo building down in Miami. South Florida, somewhere in the Miami region, and it triggered a bunch of legislation up in Tallahassee to require certain milestone inspections to be done, making sure there were enough reserves to address the structural integrity of the building. It's all about preventing from that kind of a collapse, a catastrophic collapse that caused a lot of death.
This is
from
3
happening
stories
again.
and above.
Right.
3 stories and above.
Any
So
condo or cooperative 3 stories or above, that's been occupied for a certain number of years, depending on how close it is to the ocean and that kind of thing.
What's the test that they have to get done? What is that called?
Yeah, it's the milestone inspections,
Okay.
and then the structural integrity reserve studies. So one talks about, will this building withstand weather and age and things like that, and the other is, do we have enough money in the condo reserves to address the things that are going to make sure that it's going to withstand weather and age and those things? So
All right,
that's how we prevent a collapse.
The first part of that test, right? How does it play in selfishly for the roof? So I can understand.
How does this relate back to roofs?
Yeah.
That's really what he's
Yes.
asking.
Well, we get these
Yeah.
these documents, and I don't know what I'm reading, so
Right.
Is the
given some.
roof part of the structure, or is it more of the base?
This is a little outside of my realm of expertise. I'm the document guy.
I unfortunately have some expertise in this
Okay.
because my grandmother lived in a building that had a catastrophic fault, which she then
okay.
had to not occupy for 5 years, and
Yeah.
it's still a pain in my rear end. Let's just say that.
Is that Dolphin Towers? or-
Well, they call it something else now, but I'm not
Right.
trying to hurt my property value, man.
I
So I
understand.
don't want to shout it out.
Well, that's
Hey,
not what
they're
they call it
redoing it.
now.
It's gonna
but,
be great.
But yeah, what you're talking about is probably the reserves, because really it's just like a roof is part of the structure, but it's not the kind of stuff that they're dealing with.
This new law, along with the insurance changes, really pushes the turnover of roofs.
Correct.
Whereas they used to get away with coating it. For instance, you could coat these high rises, and they'd count that as sort of a new roof. Now it's do the new roof, do it the right way,
Interesting.
or you can't get insured,
Yeah.
and you can't qualify for whatever the testing is. I'm not.
Right.
And probably,
Right.
the part that I deal with is impacting everyone going forward. Anyone that has a condo, they pay maintenance, right? That maintenance is going up if you haven't noticed.
They're
And
getting
it's-
And will
that and
continue
then
to, as the
assessments.
buildings age out.
Correct.
They will continue to go up because they'll now be under this new
It's
Surfside
it's
law.
age of the buildings, and they're actually requiring them to keep the reserves now as opposed to before. And
Now,
Well,
let me
that's
ask you
always
this.
kind of been.
All these added costs are going to most likely drive the value down of the condo units versus when you have the alternative of a house without those
I think
restrictions
Buying
involved.
a condo can be a little bit scarier, but it's a great option for a lot of people who don't want to maintain a yard, who don't want to maintain the roof themselves, who don't want to paint the place, and who want that easier lifestyle. We have a lot of retirees in the area. I mean, it's good for a lot of them. Some of them offer a lot of great concierge services and things like that. So
No, I understand the
Yeah,
benefits.
but-
It's just all these government interference are going to raise the cost of living in one of those condos and make it less attractive, right?
I had a closing that I did last year, or it started last year, finished up earlier this year, and there was a $90,000 special assessment to each unit.
Exactly. So, if you're a buyer and
That's the
that's
problem.
on the horizon, you have to take that into consideration when you're buying, which is going to drive the purchase price of the property down. Now, with that said, it seems like a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction to one event. It's a tragedy, obviously, but to put all this stuff in place, it has unintended consequences.
Well, look at it this way: if you're going to look at this condo, and all of a sudden, next year there's going to be a $90,000 assessment, what that's actually doing is driving the amount of buyers interested down. And so it's just a supply and demand point at that moment. And so, yeah, you are seeing that. And then, or sellers are taking over those payments and letting it go free and clear, which is helpful. But it's condo game is a little scary for some people right now.
well, I think generally what I've noticed around here, just being kind of somebody who's a transplant, as Trey likes to call me, because I'm not originally from here. A lot of the locals who've been here a long time, they don't live in condos. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The condos are more catering toward people like me, who come here and don't know anything about the area and don't know where to buy. So we just,
I thought you meant people like you with gray hair.
well, that too.
Well, to Trey's point, they can be more affordable too. Because
Oh no, yeah. But then they got you with that maintenance, and you don't have any control.
And a special assessment like that, it's terrible for somebody who wants to sell their place. But what about the little old lady that wants to stay in her place and can't afford to pay that special assessment? That can be the difference between having a place to live that you own and not. So it's tragic for some people. Like you said, there are a lot of unintended consequences. There are a lot of dominoes that get knocked down that maybe they're not intended to. So.
All right, let's pick up the pace a little bit, a little happier feelings.
Let's talk about all the problems in the world with real estate.
Have you seen any neighborhoods that are trending upwards, kind of like gems that you like?
Yeah, it's interesting. So when I was looking to buy my house a few years ago during the pandemic, I looked all over and I noticed a couple outliers, places that were previously very affordable that now seem to be trending way up. One of them is Wellen Park. It's almost like styling itself as the new Lakewood Ranch.
Down towards
of the
Venice,
south.
right?
Yeah. And
a lot of amenities, and
they've got that new arena down there. I think
there's a water park down there, the stadium, there's lots of stuff going in and out there.
Not everybody knows about that area, but I think that is a great up and coming area that you could probably still get into.
You're seeing volume start to pick up down there?
I think the volume has kind of always been there because it was affordable before it even became Wellen Park, that kind of Northport and just that South County area.
The growth there.
Yeah, a lot of growth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of people don't know this, but Northport's the largest city in our area, in the two counties.
Mm-hmm.
Is that geographic?
No, by population.
Really? Okay.
Really?
Not that many people live in the city of Sarasota.
Right.
It's not as many as you think. I mean,
It's
the
a
county,
small
a
area.
lot of people live.
Right.
Yeah, but Northport, that's why they're first on the census thing.
Huge. Oh, wow. Okay.
What's the craziest closing story you have? Maybe, I don't know.
I've had
Worst,
simultaneous
scary.
transactions.
Well, if you work with Maury, your closings are not crazy because he
That's
has
right.
that all before you know.
That's
We
a great-
try to
that's a great
stay on
point.
top of it. We really do. Sometimes it's tricky when you're dealing with, like, for instance, one seller has to sell their place to buy another place, and they have to buy that place for that seller to buy their place. And you really have to get that all done in the same day. And so sometimes there can be long days, when you have those kind of transactions. I've had, again, some of the very few people that I won't work with in the future. I've had.
You have a blacklist?
There are very few names on it. Maybe one or two.
We call him Mr. Green in our CRM.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
no way, really?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
do you have a
Fair enough.
blacklist?
Why is it Mr. Green?
When I used to go to the Boys and Girls Club, if there was like a stranger that invaded the campus that was dangerous, they would announce Mr. Green on the microphone.
Really?
So we're all
Oh, my
like,
goodness,
would lock
okay.
ourselves in the room. So that's where I got Mr. Green from.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Good.
I need to come up with a good one now.
No, we don't. We just don't take on people that are going to just jeopardize the rest of my clients because, my clients have such a long relationship with me that if I get hit by a truck or something like that, then they got to find somebody else. They got to start again. It's just not good.
Yeah.
So try to stay in business and not get hit by trucks.
Yeah.
Well, prior to our CRM, when I was more of a one-man band, you forget who's who sometimes. And
You're like, oh, wait, I didn't want to talk to you.
I repeated on to Mr. Green, not knowing until, you showed up the day to do the job. And it's like, I didn't realize.
Yeah. Oopsie, not this one again.
Point being, when you have like a $10 million closing and everything's done and wrapped up, but the money doesn't arrive that day and then it never arrives, those are people that you don't work with again.
Oh, man.
Yikes. You want to let everybody know who that was?
Yeah, right. Are we sharing those now?
Yeah. No.
Again, straight love.
For my own protection and my
Yeah.
family's.
Well, you're also an attorney, but you have some sort of you're under a higher
Confidentiality.
scrutiny, right? I would think than other people in the industry. Is
Yeah,
that how it works?
absolutely. I'm more accountable. I have a
He
law
takes
license.
the Hippocratic Oath.
Something like that. I certainly have to be more detail oriented than a lot of other professionals because, my reputation is everything. I think as professionals in this town, we all know that, and we want to make sure that we can continue. You're only as good as your last deal. You know, I truly believe that, and we have to make sure that we just keep that high standard. And I am under a lot of scrutiny, and the last thing anybody wants is a bar complaint. Thank God I've never had one.
That's kind of what I was getting at. You know, you went to school for a long period of time to get this degree, and
and by the way, it's not cheap either.
Right, and it's not cheap
to do that. And as somebody that doesn't come from a wealthy family, you know, I had to take out loans and things like that. And thank God, you know, I've been doing well enough to be able to repay and that kind of thing. But you know, it's a big investment. It's a big commitment, and I take it very seriously.
Now, what led you into real estate law versus another?
That was my question.
Section of the law.
You got your question.
You know,
so
what really gets you going in the morning to be a real estate lawyer?
It's very attractive to me for a number of reasons. You know, early in my career, I kind of took whatever would come through the door. They call it door law. You know, when I graduated law school,
I love it. I love it. There's a lot of guys that are doing door finance.
I know.
In fact, I would say
I get phone calls and emails from them all the time.
I don't know who you are, but I want your money today.
But when I passed the bar, you know, we were in the midst of the Great Recession. You know, law firms were not hiring; they were firing. And it
happened to a good friend of mine. I know exactly what you're talking
absolutely.
about.
I was forced to make my own way, and when you dabble in a lot of different areas, you find out real quick what you like and what you don't like. I thought I was very good when I went to court. I've got a lot of compliments on my court decorum and never really lost a case, but it wasn't for me because I like to have more control over the proceedings, and sometimes you're at the whim of a judge or a jury, and for me, I'd prefer not to be confrontational. I would, you know, when I have to go to bat for people, I do, because that's my job, and I take it very seriously, but I would prefer to do what I do, because it's like putting together the pieces of a puzzle, and when it all comes together, the buyer's getting the property they want, the seller's getting the, you know, the money that they wanted for the property, and everybody walks away generally happy and you know, better off for it. So I think those kind of positive outcomes were really attractive to me.
Win-win.
Yeah.
Win-win or no deal.
In law, there are very few win-wins. This industry is one of the exceptions.
It's really a lose-lose kind of industry, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. Except for the class action lawyers. They
seem to always win, right? You know, that 30-40%. Yeah.
You're the second undefeated lawyer that sat in that seat.
Yeah?
Our boy Tom.
That was the Tominator?
The Tominator,
okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
Hey guys, we're having a great time talking to Maury Azerad of Properties Title Management, and we're going to get to know him a little bit better with this segment, Rapid Fire.
I'm Maury Azerad, owner and attorney of Properties Title, and this is Rapid Fire. Christian Bale.
I'm Batman.
I just finished Billions on Showtime. That was a good one.
The world economy is just one big casino, fueled by a giant debt bubble and computer-driven derivatives.
North Carolina is pretty hot right now, like the Asheville area. Austin, Texas is also huge, but expensive. My first passion was always music. I'm a bit of a singer, so I like that. Performing, singing, I'm interested in that, and maybe as a second act, who knows. People that know me know that I sing Feeling Good by Michael Bublé a lot.
I'm feeling good.
Definitely Butterfinger.
Nobody better lay a finger on my Butterfinger.
I'll tell you what, I'm more of a red wine guy now, but if I had to go to a cocktail, it'd probably be an old-fashioned. It's always the future. Back to the Future series was one of my favorite movie series growing up, and I want to see what it's going to be like.
still looks fake.
Well, when you're a buyer of a residential property, I'd say use a realtor, because if you go it alone, there are going to be things that come up that you're going to have difficulty handling, and if the seller's paying for your realtor anyway, you may as well use a realtor. Go to Crab and Fin on St. Armand's Circle. It's been there for more than 30 years. It's fresh as seafood, and that's what we do best here. So.
All right, so we're talking title, closing. That is encompassing real estate law, but there's so much more in real estate law as well. So is it title, closing? Do you do tenant landlord? Any other avenues?
Primarily, I have done some of those things in the past, like I addressed before, but primarily I like to stick to real estate transactions and anything that touches those. So I do a lot of, deeds, mortgages, leases, things of that nature. There are some estate planning mechanisms in real estate that are very popular right now. I get a lot of that. So anything that would touch the transaction or that is transactional in nature, I can handle. Business closings, sometimes I do, and things like that.
Oh, great.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So you'll do the strategies around the transaction too. That's good to know, because,
Certainly.
like you said, with estate planning, there's a lot of that, opportunity zones. I mean, there's just a lot of
I like
parts.
to try to be as much of a one-stop shop as I can, but if it's outside of my expertise, then I will certainly be the first to stand up and say that, and I've got a network of people that I can work with. So.
Awesome.
Yeah, when I go to these roofing conferences, they often say, they call it stay within your hedgehog. So that means what you're really good at.
Yeah.
Once you start stepping up too far outside that hedgehog, you're liable to.
I
Why
would
a
prefer
hedgehog?
not to be a jack of all trades, but yeah, that's interesting. Why hedgehog?
Yeah, why a hedgehog?
I'm not sure. I'll look it up.
If you could please find out for
brilliant
me.
roofer came up with it
Yeah.
based on something
Leave
that
it to
happened
the
to him,
roofers.
based on a story that probably can't be told here.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, but I mean, in
Talk
my,
about inside
yeah.
baseball.
Yeah, right.
in my industry, it's the same thing. Anytime a manager is drifting away from their core competency, that's when they're, they're about to blow up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's when they're getting into trouble. So,
Yeah.
So,
style drift.
You're not a solo practitioner. You have a few partners. Is that correct?
So within the title company, I have two partners. Yeah.
Partners. What's it like having partners in business?
Yeah, I would recommend, if you're going to have partners, for there to be three of you, because it's great. Because no matter what the decision is, it's usually 2 out of 3, and the vote stands, and you move on. And as long as you all know getting into it that majority is going to rule, usually there's not going to be an issue. I think when you have two partners in a business, I think that's when you can come to those kind of gridlock situations, or and it can be very messy.
Forward momentum might slow down because of that.
So it's
I've
almost
seen
more
that,
like
yeah.
a dog pack than like a marriage, right? Because I mean, in a pack you've got the lead dog,
Yeah,
and
wolf
the,
pack, dog pack,
whatever.
yeah.
But I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense, because with two, there's always the chance of divorce, right?
That's right.
And we know,
Yeah.
I won't even get into that, but that's just the reality. Two people aren't always going to agree.
Absolutely. And what do you do to address that? Usually it has to do with something that's very time consuming and expensive. Whereas if you have 3 people, you're always going to have 2 out of 3.
Or it becomes personal, right? When there's 2 people and you don't see eye to eye, then you
Yeah.
start looking at other stuff.
Can't just
rock
rock, paper, scissors
It's
for
difficult.
everything.
I mean, we're stronger together. I think my partners and I are, certainly. We each bring something different to the table that really adds to the business. If you're such a stellar person that you don't need anybody else and you can run a business all alone, obviously that's going to be easier because the buck stops with you. You make all the decisions and you don't have to answer to anybody else. But I think there are certainly benefits to having partners as long as you have an odd number.
That's a really astute point. I've never heard anybody else say.
I know, I like
3
that.
sums for the win.
Yeah.
All right.
There we go. So just kind of to round out the real estate-oriented discussion, we had talked about this new ruling, this lawsuit with the National Association of Realtors. You were the first person to kind of tell me about that. I had never heard it, so I kind of poked around, and this is fascinating. You want to kind of give our viewers the inside dope on that?
Yeah, as much as I can without being a litigator or an expert on antitrust or price collusion. I can tell you there's a lot of stress in the industry over this right now because it has the potential to change the entire face of how real estate is done. Essentially, there was one of the largest awards in a class action suit of this nature against the National Association of Realtors and a few of the largest real estate brokerages in the country. And it was about a $1.8 billion award. And
so the lawyers did very well on that one.
Yeah. I always picture these guys sitting around in an office saying, "Who's making money today?" Let's call these people, see if they're interested.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly it.
I think that's how it goes down, which is unfortunate for the most part. But again, I don't know. I'm not in litigation, but it's certainly disruptive, and certainly some of the aspects of the ruling seem a little bit out of touch to me. Again, it's in the lower courts right now. There are going to be appeals. It may even go to the Supreme Court to rule on this because it is a federal matter.
What's the big takeaway from the
There are
rulings?
two main arguments and lawsuits that are involved. Sellers are saying, because the MLS requires me to pay something to the buyer's realtor, it's called an offer of compensation. And I'm not getting any benefit from that buyer's realtor. That person's not working for me. I may never even meet them. But I'm required by these ethical rules that are set in place by the National Association of Realtors to pay something to the buyer's realtor.
So as a realtor here, the perspective is a couple of different ways, right? So sometimes the buyer does have a lot of money to put down on a property, right? So they don't mind, or they could potentially pay for the commissions of their agent. They're hiring a person. I hire a financial advisor, I hire a doctor, I pay for them, right? So same kind of concept as what they're fighting against. The problem lies with those that do not have a lot of cash at hand to put down. So let's just call it, $300,000, and they're putting 5% down, and they might have that, but they don't have the extra money for the commission. Okay, so what's going to happen? They're going to put that amount of money on the price of the house, and then the seller is going to credit the money back to the buyer to pay their agent. So it's a wash.
So it's
it
really
almost
just
makes no sense.
It's manipulation of the contract for the purposes of getting the deal done.
Yeah.
Right.
Unless people have money and are okay with paying for it. So those buyers that don't have the cash at hand, we're price pushing in the house, right? And then that has problems too, appraisals and all of that good stuff. And or they can't get the house, so you have less buyers.
And I'm not sure you want buyers out there saying, "Oh, I can go it alone," and running into all these issues, inspections and negotiations and things like that are done by the realtors that do add a lot of value to the transaction. I think, that doesn't benefit the consumer. I mean, all of this is about consumer protection, right? So I think you're achieving the opposite result of what you want. And I was just talking to one of the CEOs of a big national realty yesterday on this, and he was telling me people will still get their own realtor, and his argument was, people want service, like they'll pay Uber Eats to bring their food and pay a little bit more, and that type of thing. But then I kind of related to, well, are people using travel agents that much anymore? If they wanted service so much and were willing to pay extra for it, now we have these things like Zillow and Realtor.com that they can go and they can try to find their own place. And a lot of people are going to think they can go it alone, but they don't fully understand the closing process and some of the pitfalls that come along with that. And that's where the realtors a lot of time can benefit a buyer. And if they don't have that, I think we're going to have a bit of a wild, wild west.
You might have an uptick in business if that happens.
It's possible. It's possible that attorney representation will become more of a norm in this area, whereas now it's not as emphasized as it is in the Northeast.
But you hit a good point. I think, what was it, either Zillow or Redfin, one of those organizations got out of that side of the business recently because they tried to do it, and even with all their resources, like you said, it just didn't make sense. Right, they weren't making money.
You need a local realtor.
You need
who
local
knows
representation,
the area,
right?
Who knows the customs of how business is done in the area more. And
and it comes down to systems and
Yeah,
connections,
yeah.
and it's a process. I mean, the whole process from my end to your end and everything in between. It's
I'm
do
sure
not
you
do
have
it
a
alone.
relationship with a loan officer that
Absolutely.
you trust that's going to get your buyers through the lending
Absolutely.
process. I'm sure you have a home inspector.
Inspectors,
So these kind of
contractors.
contacts, roofers, things of that
Yeah.
nature. I mean, I can't tell you how many deals I've closed that have a new roof put on before
Yeah.
we get to the closing table right now, because the inventory that's available in Sarasota needs work. The nice places are gone.
And
man,
insurances are not having it
Yeah.
with those roofs.
That's right. To your point, Trey, the laws change and, they don't become less restrictive, right?
Yep.
So,
That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me why people wouldn't use someone representing them. I mean, think of it this way. It's a horrible analogy. I'm going to do it anyway because I like horrible
Can't wait.
analogies.
Can't wait.
If you ask the average buyer in Sarasota if they would just buy a car from Billy Bob down the street or if they use a dealer, they all go to dealers. I mean, and that's something you change every few years. It's not that big of a purchase. Why would you trust a big purchase to Billy Bob down the street?
Right.
For sale by owner? You would not.
Right. Well, I think it just comes down to habit, and we've been doing it this particular way for so long, and now there's the wrench thrown in to people are going, wait, maybe it doesn't have to be done that way. So, but, to your point earlier, it'll be appealed and appealed and appealed and appealed. So we're not
Oh,
really
yeah.
looking at anything
this
for
is
years.
very fluid. There's going to be years.
Yeah,
of-
I
of
wouldn't
this
worry
back
about
and
it
forth.
right now.
Right now, it
there
seems
are-
to be business as usual for the most
Yeah.
part, except the owners of these brokerages are receiving these lawsuits now. So
But it's mostly the big ones, like you said.
mostly
first.
the big ones. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess we'll see. We'll have to maybe have you back and to talk more about it when the shoe drops or whatever happens.
Sure.
Okay.
Cool.
Let's go ahead and pivot to just more you personally as a
Great. Yeah.
in the community and as a business person. And particularly, I know your Jewish heritage is really important to you.
Absolutely.
So would love to hear your thoughts on some things and hear a bit more about the Jewish community in Sarasota.
Certainly, I've born and raised in Sarasota. Grew up in the Jewish community here. It's a big part of my life. These are my people, and I certainly enjoy being a part of it and being involved through various organizations.
You want to highlight some of the ones you've been involved in?
Certainly, been the chair of the board of Gulf Coast Hillel, which is a great organization that services Ringling College and New College. The Jewish students there, it kind of gives them a connection to their Judaism with events and just connections with other like-minded folks on campus and things like that. I am one of the founding members of an organization called YJA, which is Young Jewish Adults of Sarasota. It's like a social and networking organization that, again, just brings kind of the younger Jews in the area together and creates connections, fun times, memories, and keeps them connected to their heritage and things like that.
That's great. And not being of the Jewish faith, you have a large community here?
Yeah, I mean, there is a larger community, not as much on the younger end. So that's why we found a need. I think it was back in 2010 that we got going with that, and just a need for those folks to be able to connect with each other. And the older folks, they all know each other here in town already. So, but the younger people that come to town, either they have relatives here or going to school here or whatever it may be.
Very cool.
How did you come up with that? Did you found that organization? I think you mentioned you did.
Yeah, I
right?
was one of the founders.
So how did you
yeah.
come up with that idea? Were you literally replicating something that they have in other places, or
Yeah,
was there a specific need here that
No,
was
absolutely.
different?
We did not reinvent the wheel. I mean,
Yeah.
many areas have organizations like this. I think the people that founded it with me at the time, we were single, and just like many other ethnicities, your parents always put pressure on you to marry within your
Find
Right.
a nice Jewish
So
girl. Yeah,
Find a
we're all
nice
familiar
Jewish
with the
girl.
phrase.
Right, exactly.
So were you able to find one?
Not through that.
Guy went through all that effort, found an organization.
Some dates, certainly, but no. My wife and I met online, as many people do these days, later on. But there have been some marriages that have resulted from the group, which is
Well,
kind of
there you
cool.
go.
Mazel tov.
There you
So,
go.
yeah.
Mazel tov.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's good work. I enjoy it.
It's really important to keep the connections connected. You have a very personal thing within faith, all different faiths. So I think that's really cool and generous that you did that.
Well, ultimately, as far as ethnicities, religions, things like that, there just aren't that many Jews in the world anymore. So that's why I think there's such an emphasis in keeping Jewish families together and keeping the people on the planet, man.
Jeez.
So growing up in Sarasota, you've seen a lot of the growth. What are your feelings on the growth? Are you pro-growth, anti-growth?
I hate to say it, but I've always been pro-growth. I mean, I know that's going to ruffle some feathers, but for me, not only for business reasons, but I've always thought, growing up here as we did, we went to high school together. I don't know if if that's well known or not.
Born and raised.
Both born and raised here. There wasn't a whole lot to do here, And so when you turned 18, what do? You get out, right? I think it's nice that there's an option to stay now because there are things to do. To Felipe's point, there's not a whole lot of major industry here necessarily, but there are professional services. So if that's something that you're interested in, medical or finance or law or accounting or those type of things, there is a community to serve here, and there's an opportunity to stay here where your family is, to stay here where your friends are, and not have to say, I'm 18, I'm out of here, or maybe you leave, but then you have an opportunity to come back, like I did. So.
That's a good point, because we often, we celebrate the entrepreneur a lot on this show. I sound like Brad too now, don't I? But there's a huge contingent of folks like you and me who, we may be entrepreneurs if we have our own shop, but we're really professional services.
Right.
And the business is huge for that here because let's be straight, there's a lot of money in Sarasota, right? And there are a lot of people that require these services.
That's right.
But the great thing about that for us is we can do just as well as we might do doing the same job in a larger market, but here enjoying this lifestyle.
Absolutely.
I heard this morning they had some expert on about commuting in neighborhoods, and he said the average commute in New York City is just under an hour. What do you think our commutes are?
No, thank you.
Less.
No, like 7 minutes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's a great lifestyle.
Maybe for you.
Well, for him too.
I went to law school in New York City, and I can tell you, it's a difficult life, as a young professional up there. One of the reasons why I came back, mostly for family, but also for some of those reasons as well.
I think you had some other stops too, didn't you?
Yeah,
along the way.
I've lived in a lot of areas. I've lived in Dallas, Texas. I've lived in South Florida. I've lived in Denver, Colorado.
Wow.
New York City.
And always come back here.
Tallahassee at my alma mater, Florida State.
Who knows?
The more of these we do, the more we hear about people who have gone, like Maury, who had opportunities and took them and went other places and then ended up back here to settle down. So, there's something to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Ultimately, I think it was family that brought me back.
Cool. So in Sarasota, what are some of the things you enjoy doing with your leisure time, with your family?
Yeah, I love the food scene here. My wife and I go out to dinner all the time. There are probably more good restaurants here than we have any business having. Most people don't know about them, though, I've found. Everyone's like, there's no good food in Sarasota. I'm like, have you been to these 5 places? No? Okay. Well,
Right.
What are some of your favorites?
Meliora on Hillview. I'm not sure if you guys have ever been over there.
there.
If
I
you
hear a
want
lot
fine
of good
dining,
things.
I think that's one of the better places in town that you can get it. Rosemary and Thyme. I got to shout out my friend George Armstrong over there at Rosemary and Thyme on Orange. Just a fabulous, family feel, really high level of cooking, and always just very welcoming to me and my family. That's definitely one of my regular places. Not always in the mood to go out for something fancy, so got to shout out my friend Mike Whalen and Casey Daniels over at Food and Beer.
I was just gonna say
very
that.
growing like crazy. Congratulations for all their success. You may want to try to have those guys on the pod one time because they're quickly becoming a restaurant empire here in the area in a very short order. So
We've had them at Cosmopolitan Court.
Okay.
Late night a few times.
Oh, good. All right. Yeah. Known those guys for a long time. And they're
Which location do you go to?
Well, they got a downtown one now, so
So you've been going to that?
Yeah,
All right, so
recently it would be the downtown.
That's the
yeah.
one I go to. So
I haven't been to that one yet.
Babe, what's the food we tried there?
Oh my gosh, their crab rangoon, mozzarella.
So
I haven't had
Crab
those yet. I
ragu
gotta
and
try it.
mozzarella sticks.
Goat cheese,
That's
grilled
next.
cheese is my favorite.
Strong roof
That
certified.
I have had and I will
Strong
highly
certified.
recommend. If you're a grilled cheese person and you've got a big appetite, that's a good one.
Oh yeah.
We had a meeting there just yesterday, me and Edub. So we are supporters of that establishment. And I love that you're a North Side guy. You know,
Yeah.
you go to Seed and Time. What was it?
Rosemary
Rosemary
and
Time.
Time.
Yeah.
Seed and Time. And yeah. So
that's the
great.
new restaurant opening.
Yeah, fantastic.
We need to bring Brad back.
Yeah.
It's the
You're
chair,
doing a great
man.
job.
All right, so
I'm
we're
okay with
going to
it
get
either
to
way.
our staple question of
Okay.
this podcast, the roundabouts. Do you love them or do you hate them? What are your feelings overall?
I think in theory they're a fantastic idea to keep traffic moving, but in practice nobody knows how to use them. I mean, I've had people screaming and honking at me because they're not yielding, and it's like it's really a facepalm moment. 1 out of 3 times I enter one, so I would say not a great idea given, but in theory they're great. But yeah, the implementation probably not the best.
I've seen the same behavior that you just described with 4-way stop signs.
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
And I'm like, there's no excuse for that. I mean,
Yeah.
the stop sign is literally the most recognizable symbol on the planet. Like,
That's true.
everybody knows what a stop sign is everywhere.
A big
Yeah,
red
but they
hot
don't know
In
about
Sarasota, we
right away.
don't sometimes.
They don't
Yeah.
know about right away though, right?
Right
So-
away, maybe that's part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I feel like they need to have that on the driver's test now. Roundabouts.
They should just print it right on the sign
On what?
on who goes when.
on who goes when.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. That's not a bad idea.
Add more lights. I don't know.
If Maury were king, there would be instructions on 4-way stops. You see?
There you go.
You know, very pragmatic.
Your turn. Your turn.
Okay, so any other closing thoughts, things that you want to plug, maybe new developments with your business, things like that?
Yeah, I would just say, just getting back to your question a little bit earlier, one of the things that kind of sets us apart is not only my availability and there to help realtors, but we also offer a service where whether you're a buyer or a seller, and since we have so many remote closings now, people don't come to the office, we will pay for a remote signing agent to come to you at no cost to
That's
you.
a big deal.
We will absorb that cost, and that's just kind of like a customer service thing. Also, sometimes there are
Is
times
that's something new you've done recently?
No, we've
Like,
always
you've
done
always
that,
done that?
but
That's
most
cool.
of my competitors will not. Another thing that I do a lot of is sometimes I will actually go to the property to sign people. And that's a nice experience for some people. I just went out to Longbow Key not long ago, and everybody was there, and we sat down at the table with a gorgeous view and signed the closing documents, and that's better than making them come all the way to one of my offices. So.
No, I mean, if I was buying a $10 million
I was gonna say, is
house,
this the $10 million?
I mean, I would like bring a small parade.
Yeah.
Bring a video crew. You know what I mean? Maybe some trumpets.
Yep. Yeah.
It's all about letting people know that you're there for them, that you actually care about what happens to them, because it's a big deal to people. These transactions, we do them all day, every day, but for them, this is a 1, 2, or 3 times in a lifetime transaction for a lot of people.
Yeah, I always preach that to my sales guys. You can't become numb to the big numbers. You got to just remember to your client, this is a huge deal. It's the one time that they're doing this, whereas we do it every day.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
All right.
There's one last question. Okay. Other people that you think would benefit for being on this podcast, people who the audience needs to know, people who want to get their story out there, who have interesting stories like you.
Yeah, well, Mike and Casey, man, like I said, those guys
so
are
you
doing
gave us
great.
one.
I gave you one already.
Well, give us a bonus one then, since we're not letting you off that easy.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Let's see.
Got to see you squirm in the seat a bit, Maury.
Right? Yeah, this is definitely a squirming moment.
I'm just kidding.
I got to come up with somebody. Let's see. How about the general manager of the private club Waterworks?
That's a good
Alex.
You know what?
He's an interesting guy.
Yeah, I think-
He sees a lot of what's going on in the community, and he's very personable. I think he'd be great for the pod.
We'll tell you the story off air.
You a big Waterworks fan?
Yeah, I
Okay.
like
all
the
right.
place.
I like
yeah.
the place too.
That's
Certainly.
nice.
Cool. How about Carolyn? You got anything you want to talk about? Plug?
Oh man, I wasn't
Please talk
prepared
about
for this.
the Link Foundation and the Purge.
yeah, thank
That's
you.
one of the,
Yes,
I like
thank
that.
you. Definitely take a look at the Link Community Foundation. It is a beautiful nonprofit that helps hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people at this point in this community, and it's actually expanding. So I have 2 more going on next year in different places in Florida, so look out for that.
Can you break down what it is exactly, or do you want me to do it? Because I'll brag
The
for
Purge?
you. Yeah.
I would love to hear you brag
I'd love
for
to
me.
brag for you. So Carolyn figured out in her various involvements with her mom's groups and other groups of acquaintances that, oftentimes we have things that we don't need that others of our friends can use. So she created a central clearinghouse where people could essentially donate goods, and then people could go shopping cost-free to receive those goods.
Yeah.
And cutting out any middlemen or, apparatus, and all the money spent goes directly to the people receiving the benefit.
Yeah.
Would you
Thank
say that's
for that.
accurate?
I think that's very accurate.
So
and then
I think
if
it's
there's
great.
anything left over, it's donated to community-based programs, Mothers Helping Mothers, Salvation Army, Spark, and it's growing. We've served 400 people our last Purge, and we're going to continue to grow and have a Florida Purge Day and a National Purge Day one day.
So-
I'll have to start going through the closet.
Yes.
There you go. Perfect. So
Great.
far you've been doing 1 a year of these?
2. We do 2 a year, and a big step was the storage unit. So now we actually have donation drop-offs once a month, so that we are actually stocked and ready for the Purge instead of even collecting donations that day. So it's big steps, really cool. Thank you for that, the Link Community Foundation. We are always looking for some help and donations there to keep it going and serve more people.
That is fabulous.
And I think there was one more thing for you that we had to touch on, which is the Herald Tribune.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Please. I would love your support. Last year, we won Best Title Company in Sarasota.
Nice.
For the Herald Tribune Reader's Choice Awards. We are nominated again this year, so thank you to whomever nominated us again. And you can vote as often as daily. You can go to the Herald Tribune website. I think there's a link there. And we're under Home and Home Services. And vote for Properties Title. We'd love the opportunity to be your best title company in Sarasota again this year.
And when you're in there
Big deal.
voting for him, vote for Strong Roofing.
Nice.
Absolutely. I'll be voting for you.
Good deal.
Great. Thanks a lot, Maury. Great to see you, and thanks for guest hosting, Carolyn.
Absolutely. Thanks
Absolutely.
That's all
Thanks
we
for
got.
having me.
Thank
No, I
you.
appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.
So fun, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Good job, Carolyn. Thanks for stepping in.